Arrogant boxer forced a young black girl to fight to humiliate her. Then the unthinkable happened. The warehouse reeked of sweat, iron, and old anger, the kind that didn't shout, but simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. The ring at the center wasn't made for elegance or theatrics. Its ropes were frayed, the floor was scuffed with dried blood, and the low-hung lights above cast long shadows across the crowd of spectators who leaned forward, not out of curiosity, but hunger. And in that moment, standing just outside the ropes, her gloves still hanging loose around her neck, was Talia Knox. She was only 17. 17, with a frame that had more muscle than most expected, but still wrapped in the softness of youth. Her braids were tied back in a high knot, and her eyes, dark and unblinking, were fixed on the man inside the ring. Bradley, the showman cutter. A professional boxer known less for titles and more for the trash he talked between matches. He was tall, wide-shouldered, with a jaw like granite and the smile of someone who had never been punched by humility. He wore a gold chain over his tank top, and even though this wasn't an official fight, his swagger was in full performance mode. "Y'all really brought her?" he said, grinning as he turned toward the crowd, gesturing toward Talia like she was a joke brought to life. "I said I wanted a warm-up, not a field trip." A few in the crowd chuckled, but others shifted uneasily. Most of them knew of Talia, not from the big leagues, but from the underground youth circuit where she'd been racking up wins against older fighters since she was 14. She wasn't flashy. She didn't talk big, but she hit like thunder and moved like wind. "Don't do this," muttered Cody, her trainer, standing beside her with crossed arms and a clenched jaw. "You don't owe these people a show, Talia. You came here to watch, not to be part of this circus." Talia didn't answer right away. Her gaze was still on Bradley, who had now started bouncing on his heels, theatrically warming up while two local gym reps tried to defuse the tension with nervous laughter. "I didn't ask to be challenged," she said finally, her voice low, calm, but firm like a stone dropped into still water. "But I'm not backing down either." Cody sighed heavily. "He outweighs you by 70 pounds. And she turned to look at him now. "I'm not here for ego. I'm here to remind people that respect isn't handed down. It's earned, punch by punch." Before Cody could answer, the bell rang, not officially, not by a referee, but by the crowd's collective shout. The kind of sound that meant no one was going to stop this now. Inside the ring, Bradley sauntered to the center, holding out his gloves like they were props in a comedy. "Let's make it quick, princess," he smirked. "Don't want to ruin that pretty face." Talia didn't flinch. She stepped forward and tapped gloves with him, not out of tradition, but as a warning. The moment the match began, it was clear Bradley wasn't going to treat it like a real fight. He danced around lazily, throwing exaggerated jabs in the air, taunting, showboating. The crowd laughed at first, but some began to shift again, uncomfortable with the way he grinned every time he feinted a hit just inches from her face. Talia remained still, waiting, calculating. He threw his first real punch in the second minute, a heavy cross meant to end it before it began. She ducked it so cleanly he stumbled forward, exposed. That's when she hit back. Not with wild swings. Not with the brute strength people expect from boxers trying to prove a point. No, her punch came from the hip, tight and technical, a textbook counter that caught him square in the ribs and knocked the air from his lungs. The crowd gasped. Bradley stepped back, surprise flashing across his face. Not from pain, but confusion. He wasn't used to being touched. He wasn't used to being outsmarted. "Lucky shot," he muttered, rolling his shoulders. Talia's face remained neutral. "No such thing," she said. Cody stood at the edge of the ring, watching her work like an artist with gloves, not fueled by rage or ego, but by precision and purpose. It was never about hurting him. It was about making him see her, making the whole room see her. As the third minute passed, Bradley began sweating more than usual. His punches got wider, sloppier. Talia kept moving, ducking, jabbing, working his body. She was silent the whole time, a storm without thunder, but every bit as devastating. By the end of the round, if you could call it that, Bradley was breathing hard, his cocky grin long gone, his shoulders sagging. Talia hadn't even broken a sweat. The room, once loud, now pulsed with that rare, sacred tension that exists only when people realize something extraordinary is happening in front of them. Something they hadn't expected. Something they could no longer deny. "You done yet?" she asked, not sarcastically, but honestly. Bradley didn't answer. He just nodded, shoulders heavy, and walked to the ropes without looking back. Silence. Then applause. Real applause. Not for drama. Not for spectacle. But for Talia Knox, the girl they'd tried to use as a punchline, who turned the ring into a classroom and gave them all a lesson they'd never forget. Later that night, long after the echoes of clapping hands had faded and the warehouse had returned to its usual emptiness, Talia sat alone on the back steps behind the gym. Her hands were still wrapped, though the gloves had been pulled off and tossed beside her. The concrete beneath her was cool, almost damp, and the sharp scent of metal and old oil lingered in the air. She didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel like she'd won anything. What she felt was the weight of having proved something, again, to a world that still doubted her for all the reasons that had nothing to do with ability. The door creaked behind her. Cody stepped out, rubbing his chin and letting the door fall shut behind him. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quieter now, not the commanding tone of a coach, but the concerned timbre of a mentor. "I'm tired," Talia said without looking at him. Not from the fight. From what the fight meant. Cody nodded slowly. "I know. That wasn't a match. That was a performance. One you didn't sign up for." She exhaled, the breath curling out of her like smoke. "They didn't clap because I boxed well. They clapped because I survived their expectations." Cody sat beside her, his legs stiff from the cold. "You did more than survive, T," he said. "You exposed him. Not just physically. You broke through his story, the one where he's always the star and everyone else is a background actor." She looked at him now, her eyes sharp, but not bitter. "I don't want to make my name by beating people like him." "You didn't," he replied. "You made your name by showing you're not afraid to step in, even when the world tries to turn you into a punchline." They sat in silence for a while. Then Cody said, almost offhand, "You're going to get a call." Talia frowned. "From who?" "Did you not see her?" he asked with a smirk. "Front row, black jacket, clipboard?" "That was Dana Caldwell from Silverback Promotions." Talia blinked. "The same Silverback that hosts the National Youth Invitational?" "The very same." She was there. She saw the whole thing. Every jab, every pivot, every second you let that man destroy himself with his own arrogance while you stayed grounded like a surgeon. Talia leaned back against the metal railing. And, and she's going to call. She's going to want to see you in something bigger. Something real. 2 days later, it wasn't a call. It was an email. Subject: Opportunity to compete. Silverback Youth Showcase. Body: Talia Knox. "We'd like to formally invite you to participate in this year's National Youth Invitational." Talia read it 3 times before she looked up from her phone. She didn't smile. She didn't scream. She simply handed it to Cody, who read it once and nodded. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "guess we better start training for something real." The Youth Invitational was different from the warehouse. There were no flickering lights, no rusted ropes, no drunk bettors shouting from the corners. The arena was sleek and clinical, and the fighters were ranked, organized by region, weight class, and skill level. Everything about it said professional. Everything about it said only the best survive here. Talia stood in the center of the prep room, watching the other competitors go through warm-ups. Most were older than her. Most were boys. Some stared. Some whispered. One or two even pointed. None approached. Cody leaned against the wall beside her, arms crossed, face unreadable. You don't need to impress them, he said. You just need to remind yourself why you're here. Talia wrapped her wrists tighter. I know. But deep inside, a flicker of uncertainty rippled through her. This wasn't like before. This wasn't some cocky showman underestimating her. This was a crowd of young professionals, people who took boxing seriously, who trained like it was oxygen, who weren't here for laughs or cheap shots. These people weren't looking to mock her. They were looking to beat her. Her first match was scheduled for noon. The announcer's voice echoed across the intercom, calling her name as she stepped onto the canvas. Her opponent was a tall girl from Nevada named Brielle, sharp cheekbones, long reach, fast hands. Talia had seen her fight once on YouTube. She was clinical, calculating, the kind of opponent who didn't fight with emotion but with blueprints. The bell rang. Talia moved forward, not aggressively, but with precision. She respected Brielle. She understood what this ring was, not a battlefield, but a dialogue of styles, a language of movement. The fight was close. Each round passed like a lesson, Talia absorbing, adjusting, improvising. She learned Brielle's rhythm and disrupted it, finding small gaps, breaking her timing. By the final round, both girls were winded, but Talia had control. She won by decision. No one booed. No one questioned it. In fact, several of the competitors who'd previously looked right through her now looked at her with curiosity. A few with something close to respect. By the third fight, she was in the semifinals. By then, word had gotten out. That's the girl who made Bradley Cutter quit. That's the girl who took out Brielle. That's Talia Knox. Not the girl boxer. Not the young one. Just her name. And it echoed through the arena with a weight she hadn't expected. After her win, as she toweled off in the prep room, a tall shadow stepped into the doorway. It was Dana Caldwell. No clipboard this time, just a calm, observant look. You move like someone who's been fighting twice as long as she's been alive, Dana said. Talia didn't respond immediately. I've been training most of my life. And fighting with more than just gloves, I imagine. Always. Dana nodded. Good. Because if you make the finals, and I think you will, I have something in mind. Something bigger than this tournament. Talia tilted her head. Like what? A pro debut. In front of a real crowd. Not just because you're talented, but because you've got presence. You make people uncomfortable in the best way. You don't entertain them. You unsettle them. And that's what makes greatness. She walked away without waiting for a reply. And Talia, for the first time since stepping into that warehouse ring with Bradley Cutter, let herself smile. The arena lights were colder in the finals. There was something unforgiving about how they poured down from the rafters. Not like sunlight, not like stage lights. No warmth. Just raw visibility. Like the ring had become a microscope, and Talia Knox was a specimen placed on the glass. Every movement of hers magnified, measured, and recorded. But she didn't flinch. Not when the announcer called her name and her opponents in the same breath. Mira Ellis, the reigning youth champion from the East Coast, undefeated, with a reputation for brutality masked in grace. Not when the crowd murmured, weighing Talia's skill against Myra's legacy. And not when she stood across the ring from her and saw the way Mira smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even a cocky one. It was the smile of someone who knew she was the storm in the room and had no intention of softening her wins. People talk about you like you're a miracle, Mira said during the ref's instructions, her voice low but clear. Let's see if you last more than 2 rounds. Talia didn't smile back. Instead, she replied, calm as a held breath. Miracles don't last, but storms don't shake trees with deep roots. The bell rang. Round 1 was a study in survival. Mira didn't waste time. She opened with a level of aggression Talia hadn't faced before. Hooks came fast. Combinations were sharp, seamless. She attacked high, then low, then back to high, forcing Talia into a defensive rhythm just to keep up. Cody's voice echoed from the corner. She's trying to drown you early. Stay light. Stay smart. Talia absorbed, adjusted. By the end of the round, her arms ached from blocking, but she'd begun to read Myra's cadence. The half-second pauses before a cross, the way her front foot slid an inch left before a body shot. Round two started differently. Talia didn't retreat. She moved through. She jabbed early, a fast flick to Myra's nose that surprised the champ more than it hurt her. Then a feint, step in, jab to the ribs. The crowd noticed. Myra noticed. Her eyes sharpened. And for the first time in the match, Myra missed. Talia slipped right under a vicious hook, pivoted inside, and landed a clean uppercut to the gut. Not a knockout blow, but a message. I see you. I'm still here. By round three, the fight had become what few expected, equal. The commentary team whispered it, not daring to say it too loudly. Kid's not just holding her own. She's adapting. She's taking Myra out of her rhythm. Do we have an upset in the making? Talia barely registered them. She was in that place she only entered during real fights, the quiet room in her mind where time stretched and instinct sharpened, where everything else fell away except footwork, breath, timing. When the round ended, Myra sat down heavily for the first time. She didn't speak, but her eyes said it all. In Talia's corner, Cody handed her water, but his hands trembled slightly. He didn't hide it. I won't say you've got her, he said, but she's thinking now. She's doubting. That's more than half the war. Talia nodded. I don't need to beat her. I just need to make her beat herself. You do that by staying you. Don't try to become her. I won't. And she didn't. Round four was the slowest, not by pace, but by calculation. They traded fewer blows, not out of exhaustion, but because they both knew now that the wrong move could shift everything. Myra tested. Talia responded. And in the final 30 seconds, Talia did something Myra hadn't anticipated. She led. She pushed forward with a triple jab, spun off the right angle, and caught Myra just behind the ear with a short right hook. Myra stumbled, not dramatically, but enough that the referee's eyes widened. It wasn't a knockdown, but it was a public admission that even champions can be touched. The bell rang, and the crowd, once skeptical, now stood on their feet, not because someone had won yet, but because the narrative had changed. This wasn't a pity fight. This wasn't an underdog story. This was a match between equals. Backstage after the decision, which went to Myra by a narrow margin, Talia sat with a towel over her shoulders, heart still pounding. Her lip was split. Her ribs ached. But she felt nothing close to defeat. Myra approached, still in gloves, her eyes serious now, the smile long gone. You fight like someone who doesn't care about the noise, she said. I don't, Talia replied. Noise is only loud if you stop moving. Myra extended a glove. We'll meet again. I know. They bumped gloves. It wasn't forced. It was earned. As they exited the stadium, Dana Caldwell was waiting by the doors, phone in hand, blazer slung over her shoulder. I was hoping you'd lose. Talia raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. Dana grinned. Because now you have more to prove. And the world's addicted to stories about unfinished business. You're not just a prodigy, Talia. You're a problem. And networks love problems. She handed Cody a card with dates. Tune-up match. 2 months. Pay-per-view undercard. Your pro debut. And just like that, the next mountain appeared. And Talia was already climbing. The gym smelled sharper now, like effort, sweat, chalk dust, and something older, expectation. Talia could feel it the moment she stepped inside each morning. People didn't look at her the same way anymore. Not just the other fighters, who now made room when she walked past, or Cody, whose coaching had become more precise and less protective. Even the bag boys, the trainers, the journalists who started to loiter at the edges, they all watched her differently. Not as the girl who survived Cutter, not as the youth prodigy from the underground, but as a name that was beginning to matter. Talia Knox. Cody printed it in large, block letters across her new gear, on her gloves, her robe, the training towels. Branded now. Real. Her pro debut was scheduled in 8 weeks, a mid-card fight during a pay-per-view event featuring bigger names, flashier rivalries. But word had already begun to circulate that Talia's match might steal the night. Not because she was flashy, not because she talked trash, but because there was something undeniable about the way she carried herself in the ring. Poised, precise, like someone who wasn't performing, just being. Her opponent? A Cuban-American fighter named Carla Vega, 23 years old, seasoned, undefeated in 5 pro bouts. Heavy hands, aggressive style, a favorite of local sports channels, with a growing fan base and a penchant for brutal second-round finishes. She's going to come at you like a car crash, Cody said one afternoon as Talia hit the pads. No warning, no rhythm, just force. Talia didn't stop punching. Then I'll be the airbag. The weeks leading up to the fight were a blur of interviews, sparring, meal plans, blood work, weight checks, and strategy meetings. But through it all, Talia stayed grounded. She spent her nights watching old fights, Ollie, Holmes, and Wolf, Lucia Ridger, and her mornings running along the same cracked sidewalks she'd always known. Fame hadn't reached her neighborhood yet, and she liked it that way. One morning, while tying her shoes before a sprint, a girl, maybe 11, maybe 12, stopped her outside the corner store. Her backpack was bigger than her torso. Her voice was hesitant. Are you the fighter lady? Talia smiled. That's one name they've given me, yeah. The girl's eyes lit up. I saw your fight. The one where that man said you didn't belong. You didn't even get mad. You just won. Talia knelt to her level. Sometimes winning is getting mad, just not in the way they expect. The girl grinned, nodded once, and ran off. Talia sat on the curb a minute longer than she planned to. That one moment felt bigger than any trophy. The night of the fight arrived like a wave crashing against a dam, unstoppable and loud. The arena lights were cruel and beautiful, the kind that made sweat shimmer like glass. The crowd buzzed like electricity, fans waving signs, camera crews wheeling past, the audio team testing headsets, the commentators rattling off stats. Cody stood beside her in the tunnel, tugging at the laces on her gloves, not for necessity. They were already tight, but as ritual. You ready? He asked. I've been ready, she replied. They're just catching up. Carla Vega entered first, long black shorts, red top, bouncing on her toes with the ease of a woman used to being feared. Her corner wore matching outfits, shouting in Spanish, focused and fiery. Talia stepped out second, not to music, not to fireworks, just to the sound of her name over the loudspeaker, slow and deliberate. Now entering the ring. Talia quiet storm Knox. The crowd leaned in. They didn't know what to expect, and that was the most dangerous advantage a fighter could have. The bell rang, and Carla came exactly as Cody said she would, a car crash in motion. She launched forward with 2 wild hooks, trying to crowd Talia early, trying to overwhelm her with power and pressure. But Talia didn't flinch. She pivoted, slipped left, landed a jab to the temple that made Carla blink. Cody called from the corner, "Make her chase ghosts." Talia danced, not out of fear, out of intent. She let Carla burn fuel, wild swings, heavy feet, frustrated grunts. And then, in the final 30 seconds of the first round, she countered, a lightning-fast combo to the body and chin that snapped Carla's head back just as the bell rang. The crowd exploded. Talia walked to her corner calm, breathing evenly. Carla spat her mouthguard out with frustration. Round 2 began with more fury. Carla roared forward again, this time tighter, smarter. She clipped Talia on the shoulder, forced a clinch, shoved her off balance. Talia recovered, reset her feet, landed 2 jabs, and an uppercut that staggered Carla back. But Carla was strong. Dangerous. Halfway through the round, she landed a body shot that made Talia wince. Cody saw it. Guard your ribs. Breathe with the hit. Talia nodded. She survived the round. And by the end of the third, both women were bleeding. Talia from her lip, Carla from her nose. But only one of them was slowing down. Round 4 was different. Talia stopped moving away. She stepped into Carla's power, ducked a right cross, landed a counter that stunned, then another, then a body shot that crumpled Carla's elbow inward. The crowd began to rise. Another hook, another flurry, and then one final punch. A right hand to the chin that spun Carla halfway around before her legs buckled and she dropped to one knee. The ref stepped in. 8 seconds. 9. Carla stood. Barely. The bell rang. But the damage was done. By the end of round 5, the decision wasn't in question. It was unanimous. Talia Knox, winner by decision. The crowd erupted, not with polite applause, but with roars. Roars for a girl who never asked to be anyone's underdog and never once waited for permission to take up space. Backstage, as she sat getting stitched above her eyebrow, Dana Caldwell walked in with a contract already in hand. Main card, she said. Title qualifier. 2 months. Headliner. Talia didn't ask who. She didn't care. Because it wasn't about them. It never had been. It was about standing in the ring, round after round, until the world couldn't ignore her anymore. And now? Now they were watching. Fame didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, first as murmurs, then headlines, then viral clips dissected frame by frame. Overnight, Talia Knox became the name on everyone's lips. The girl who dismantled egos with silence and fists, who walked into the ring like it was her birthright and stood with the poise of someone who didn't need to prove anything, but did it anyway. And yet, despite the whirlwind, the interviews, the magazine covers, the late-night feature spotlights, Talia remained exactly who she was: grounded, private, analytical. She trained harder, spoke less, let her work speak in volumes louder than any hype. But there was one moment left. The moment that would transform her not just into a phenomenon, but a symbol. The World Boxing Federation's Intercontinental Title Qualifier. Madison Square Garden. Talia versus Bradley, the showman cutter, again. Not a stunt. Not a rematch cooked up for headlines. He had climbed back too, reluctantly, angrily, clawing through smaller fights, desperate to erase the memory of that night in the warehouse when a teenager embarrassed him with grace. And when the rankings aligned and the opportunity came, he agreed. Not to redeem himself, but to reclaim his pride. I made her, he said in a press conference. Without me, no one would know her name. This fight isn't about revenge. It's about reminding everyone where the spotlight started. Talia listened and said nothing. But when the cameras turned to her, she finally spoke. I don't fight to take spotlights, she said. I fight to light new ones, especially for the girls no one ever claps for. That soundbite went global. The night of the fight, the air was different. Not anxious, reverent. Everyone knew what this meant. Cameras flashed. Reporters squeezed into every corner of the building. Fans screamed from the rafters, holding signs that read "Storm coming" and "Make History." Even legends of the sport sat front row, nodding solemnly as the fighters were announced. Cutter entered with spectacle, fireworks, blaring rap beats, and his name in gold lights. He wore a crown, literally, a faux gold crown perched atop his head. Talia walked in with the hood up, no music, just the sound of a heart monitor beeping softly. It faded as she climbed into the ring. Round 1. Bradley came hard, just like last time, but sharper now, more dangerous. He wasn't here to clown. He'd trained, hardened, obsessed. His punches were crisp, accurate. Talia blocked, evaded, absorbed, and waited. By round 3, the rhythm shifted. He grew louder. She grew quieter. By round 5, he was exhausted. Sloppy again. By round 7, she led the dance. And by round 10, she stopped him. Not with a knockout, but with a look. He threw one final haymaker. She caught it mid-swing, locked it under her arm, and whispered something no mic picked up. He stepped back, dropped his gloves, and sat down in the ring. The ref waved it off. The crowd lost its mind. Talia stood center ring, arms down, sweat dripping, chest rising like the quiet aftermath of a storm. Dana Caldwell entered the ring with the belt in her hands. "You want to say something?" she asked. Talia took the mic, paused, and looked at the thousands who had once laughed, doubted, ignored. "This isn't my story alone," she said. "This is every story they tried to silence. Every girl told to shrink. Every fighter told she didn't belong. Every storm that started as a whisper. They say history is written by victors. But legacy? That's written by the ones who refuse to be erased." Talia Knox didn't just fight. She redefined what fighting looked like. And no one would ever forget her name again.